With this energy of the Six of Pentacles and the Moon, this is somebody who, when they first came into contact with you, they were very enthusiastic and hopeful that like the universe had brought you together for a particular reason. You know, your paths had crossed, the moment was right. But then when they approached, when they spoke to you, when they spent some time with you, there was something intuitively that kind of let them know, or maybe this is something that you said, a way in which you presented yourself that doesn't indicate anything that you've done wrong. It's just kind of the reality of where you were at that particular point in time, that this person felt like the timing was slightly off for the two of you. This feels like somebody, though, that is not like, this doesn't feel right, you know, my instincts are telling me this is a red flag or this would be a mistake. There's almost something within them that kind of like encourage them to sort of take more of a relaxed approach, more of an observer stance, to the connection, almost like shifting very comfortably into sort of a feminine energy within that did not require or ask that you chase them, but instead was just an energy of like, I'll hold space until the timing is better. I'll wait. I'm not going to try to force the situation at this particular point in time. I'm not losing interest. It's just something where it feels like, and maybe this could have had to do with even with that Pentacles energy, sort of obstacles in both of your lives, where it was very hard to connect, very hard to, be consistent with one another, or things that they anticipated even on their side of the equation of like, okay, the energy feels a bit off, the circumstances feel a bit off. I know what I've got going on. And so on my side of things, I can't guarantee that I can kind of like pick up all of that slack, or, that my feelings won't get hurt if, disappointments happen or things aren't going well between the two of us, for whatever reason. And so again, this is somebody that almost might have taken more of like a masculine, proactive energy as far as the situation was initially concerned. But then again, it has like shifted into this kind of observer feminine stance. They've kind of like moved back into the shadows. They're watching from afar. They're being very quiet, or they've been very quiet, kind of just letting you do your thing, letting you kind of deal with whatever it is that you're dealing with. Or maybe this is somebody who's been tending to things in their own life in order to free up time and space to be able to have more flexibility in terms of what your interactions with one another can look like. This can also be an energy where this person had like come forward towards you, and maybe they thought that you'd be a hard nut to crack, or that you would kind of respond to their sort of enthusiasm with boundaries and barriers, and not that you were easy, or that was like easy to get in with you, but almost a sense of like, yeah, it felt so natural, it felt like we connected so well, it actually opened up between the two of us, like the communication or the energy quicker or easier than I expected. And this is somebody then that kind of like looked around at their own material circumstance or their own even emotional readiness and was like, I don't want to let you down and disappoint you by kind of over promising and under delivering. So let me take this time to kind of like prepare myself a little bit better, or get into a situation in my life, maybe something that they knew was kind of like they were having to change things around in their reality, enter a new cycle, close out an old cycle, things like that, in order to be able to kind of show up in this connection with you, not with a half-hearted energy or like a wishy-washy energy. So it's almost somebody that was kind of like, if this is meant to be, we will be able to catch up with one another further down the road. But at a point where there may have been kind of like led to sort of disconnect, there may have been silence between the two of you. It doesn't feel like anything where this person would need to like come back in with an apology. It would just kind of require a reconnection, and that feels to be something that was like very consciously done on their part. They listened to their guidance and intuition as far as subtle cues and indicators that you were giving, or even something that when they kind of turned and reflected on the nature of their own sort of like day-to-day reality, it's like, okay, I don't have the stamina or the time or the emotional bandwidth to be able to kind of be very present and sort of not sabotage this, or to show up in a way where it's like, I got a lot of flexibility where if things are moving very quickly, then we can progress forward with one another at almost like an exponential pace. Like all they had time for was kind of like slow and steady, casual, sort of like intermittent, things where it's like maybe regular conversation was kind of the best that they could expect. Very little kind of like face-to-face interaction, or something that they thought that it it might take some time of these kind of like little snippets of conversation in order to get to that place with one another where you were comfortable enough to like open up about deeper things, bigger things, make plans to kind of like get together. And it moved very quickly. And so this person moved into that energy of the feminine polarity. That feels to be somewhere that they're not comfortable being in. It doesn't feel like the right position for them, in terms of like how they want to approach this connection or connections in general. It feels like this person is most comfortable in that masculine energy, the planner, the doer, the initiator, the one who kind of like activates change within the circumstance. And so because they've kind of like had to shift into that feminine side of themselves, this is something where they're listening to that guidance, like, okay, until it seems like a path is clear, either I've cleared a path, or as they may be kind of checking in on you, watching from afar, or if you have kind of like sporadic interactions with one another, as they recognize that kind of things have shifted, things have moved forward, things have cleared out in your own life. And this is something that it feels like they trust that they will very comfortably kind of like move back into that sort of masculine polarity that they were in when they first connected with you. Because that feels to be kind of the energy in order to be able to truly like take steps forward, not in a way where you're having to chase and push and kind of coax this person to do that, but in a way in which they can show up as like an enthusiastic and very kind of involved potential partner with you. We also have the Eight of Cups and the Two of Cups. Yeah, so this person kind of like sensed or intuited either that you were going through some heavy things emotionally at the time when you met one another. And this is almost something, again, like shifting into this kind of like feminine energy within. This is something where it's like, I feel this deep connection. I sense there's a lot of potential between the two of us. But the best thing that I just instinctually can do at this point in time is be kind of like a silent space beside you, like a silent support. There might have been where they didn't want to like pry, they didn't want to ask about things, they didn't feel it was their place to like come in and be some kind of rescuer. Maybe you didn't give off that vibe of like damsel in distress, or it's something where they could kind of tell you were maybe fragile, fresh out of a relationship, so as much as like there was this potential, something inside of them kind of indicated to sort of hold off on this for later. This is somebody that has definitely checked in, though. They've checked in from afar. They've heard about you through the grapevine, not just in terms of rumors floating about, but it feels like they've asked other people, or they've been kind of that silent observer, that silent admirer. Definitely, if you're on one another's social media, they check your social media regularly. They watch. They're observing. This isn't like in creepy stalker, I'm just going to kind of withhold and sit here and look sort of energy, but is this you may be dealing with like a very intuitive person, an empath, somebody who is able to like read energy, read vibes. Like, yeah, words are good, actions are good, but what does the vibe say? And this is something where they've been kind of watching your progress. They might have even just like noticed something within you you might not have even seen within yourself, or maybe it's something that you were aware of, like you would either just come out of some big cycle, some kind of big point of release, or you'd made a new beginning for yourself, or you were carrying some sort of burden that you were in the process of releasing emotionally or energetically. And so the best that this person could think to do is like, I'm just going to wait. I'm not in any sort of rush. I want you to be able to kind of get to that place where if you're sitting in an Eight of Cups energy, you're able to continue to walk yourself through to like a personalized 10 of Cups. Then I can come in and we can explore this romance, because I don't want to deprive you of whatever is kind of necessary for you in terms of whatever the karmic lesson is or the cycle is that you're working through. If it's a new beginning you've created for yourself and maybe you were sort of like fresh into that, this is somebody that's like, I don't want to just kind of come in and maybe, set you off course. I don't want to come in and just kind of put my stamp all over things. I want you to be able to enjoy this kind of like freedom you're creating for yourself, this level of abundance that you're creating for yourself, and then we can meet in this energy where we're able to like enhance or accentuate that for one another. This person has been sending you loving thoughts, encouraging thoughts from afar. They've been holding silent space, but it's also, kind of like going out of their way to find out how are you doing, checking in on you. If you're, posting things on social media, like, selfies, things like that, they're definitely sort of like looking at those pictures and they've watched kind of the evolution, the energy around you changing, your smile changing, the light in your eyes changing, and they're seeing like, okay, you're you know how to self-soothe, you know how to heal, you know how to move through things on your own. So it was the right choice for them to kind of take this observer stance. This could also be somebody that had dealt with a lot of like codependent partners in the past, and so this could have been something that, instead of just being like very altruistic and like, oh, it seems like you're going through things, don't mind me, I don't want to like come in and interfere, there may have been something that was like a wound or a trigger, like people in their past that they had dealt with that had put out that like damsel in distress vibe. There may have been something very kind of initially instinctually within them that's like, oh, I'm not trying to get involved in situations like that again, because I know what it took to kind of like figure out that that was a pattern for me, and I've tried to avoid that. So there may have been a little of kind of like this reflexive kind of recoiling from you, but this is definitely somebody that has like eased off of that place of like taking a big step back, and they've observed, they've been curious. This is somebody that's like emotionally involved enough within themselves to not shame themselves for that kind of like recoiling, reaction, but to also not kind of judge that at face value as it's just the gospel truth. Like, oh, my instinct said to do that, so that must mean I just avoided some kind of trap. I dodged a bullet, something like that. This is something where, they've looked at it from another angle. They've observed, they've taken time, they've searched within, they've asked themselves, is this just a product of that trigger? If it possibly is, what can new evidence sort of show me as far as the ways in which that trigger was kind of like misleading me, or ways in which that kind of triggered instinct within was actually the right thing to do, because it's given you the space to continue forth in whatever this process is that maybe you'd mentioned to them, or again they could kind of just like sense, they could see, they could feel, the vibe was giving them that kind of impression of like, yeah, there's a connection, there's a possibility, there's attraction. But it was almost kind of like you were coming into a place of maybe a tough cycle that you stepped out of, and needing to kind of live a little within the fullness of that empowerment before kind of adding another person into the mix. We also have the Six of Wands and the Nine of Cups. Yeah, so it feels like this person has gotten some kind of sign, signal, indicator, maybe even just kind of their instinct within letting them know, hey, this may be time to approach again. This may be time to reconnect. But this isn't somebody that just wants to do a temperature check and kind of like, hey, knock, knock, remember me? Like, how you doing? And kind of like come in all nonchalant, have a little bit of chitty chat back and forth, and then they kind of take a step back again. This is somebody that it's kind of like, okay, it feels like you have evolved out of that kind of Eight of Cups into the Nine of Cups for themselves as well. If there'd been that kind of instinct to recoil, that is an Eight of Cups energy within themselves as well. They took a step back, they took a side step, and they're kind of observed from a different angle. Now they sort of see that, they're recognizing that, they're holding that as a possibility inside of them as well, that it might not have just been all you, there could have been something within them as well, kind of like two to tango, even doing this dance with one another in a certain way, like energetically or emotionally. So now there's a sense of like, okay, time has passed. I've given this like a grace period. We've had this ability to kind of, sort of regroup, address whatever we needed to address within ourselves. Time has gone on, life has happened. Let's revisit this. And it feels like this is somebody that wants to approach and is embodying that energy of the Nine of Cups. They're very satisfied. They're very proud of themselves. It's almost like they passed a test that this emotional part of themselves that recognized perhaps a pattern of in the past attracting and participating in kind of like codependent connections, being that emotional rescuer for other people. And regardless of if you needed that, maybe you unconsciously didn't know, like that was sort of a vibe that was being given off because you were in the process of like, you saved yourself. You were in the midst of rescuing yourself, and this person, crossed paths with you, and you're sort of like, okay, I got this. Like I got myself out of something, or I'm moving through something. I'm kind of adjusting to life on the other side of something. Hey, here's all this exciting potential with this other person, but it was still in your energy signature somewhere. Even the fact that you were like beyond the threshold of that, it sent off a signal to them in some sort of way that caused them to have to sort of like adjust their stance to you, to take that step back, to observe. But now they are kind of like feeling, they're listening to that feeling sense within, all the feedback that they've gotten, if they've asked about you, if they've been watching, from afar, kind of like checking up on the social media, lurking, but in that very sort of like cute and endearing kind of way, what they're seeing, what is evidenced to them, what their own instincts, what their spidey sense is telling them is like, this is the time to approach. If this was something that it was like, hey, hey, this potentially could be like the right person or a good thing, but the timing was off. Well, time has passed, so maybe now's the time to move forward. We also have Queen of Cups and Queen of Wands. So this person definitely sees that in the time since you have last been in like regular contact, or you saw one another, you were communicating, what they see now, what they sense energetically. And for most of you, it's like this is somebody that's got eyes on you. They're able to see, they're able to observe. You have really ripened in this very like yummy energy. Whatever it is that you were going through, whether you needed to shed and release things and this has liberated you, and like your glow, your vibe, your level of attractiveness is off the charts, it has increased exponentially. Or if this is something where you had already created a fresh start for yourself, and maybe this person crossed your paths very kind of like newly into that kind of fresh beginning, fresh start, something that you'd like left a version of yourself, or circumstances, or like another person, like a karmic person, a toxic person, whatever that looks like from your past, and you were already situated within that. I'm ready to embrace new experiences. I'm looking for those new beginnings. I'm creating those for myself every day. You've come into the fullness of that. You've settled into that, but it's also with this kind of like expansive, glowy sort of energy. So this person was attracted to you before, they're like really attracted to you now. And this is somebody that definitely, it feels like, plans on approaching, plans on saying something, doesn't just want to sit in like creeper, watcher, lurker kind of energy. This is something where it's like, I want to come in out of the shadows. They're not coming in from out of the cold, but it's almost like I have a way to have our paths intersect once again. My orbit will cross paths with your orbit at this kind of like inevitable time, or maybe the time is kind of right and all that remains is for them to kind of create that moment of intersection, to reach out, to communicate, to speak, to go from that place of observation into like, okay, I'm gonna turn these thoughts that I'm having, these good vibes that I'm sending from afar, I'm gonna turn those into words. So you're not just kind of like picking up on my energy, you're not just sensing kind of like eyes on you, but that like, hey, it's me, hey, I'm watching, hey, I'm interested, hey, I'm looking to reconnect, or to see maybe it'll work between the two of us at this point in time in ways that it was not able to before. So those are your messages. I hope that they resonated with you and that you enjoyed the reading. Like or comment to claim these energies. Subscribe to my channel if you would like to see more content that I put out here. Don't forget to hit the bell button to get notifications every time I post a new video. And if you would like to book a personal reading with me, I offer those through my Etsy shop, and there's a link for that below. I hope to see you again in another reading. Please take care and be well.